Patchwork Heart Ministry and Fiat Ministry Network invite you to discover your mission. A brand new in-depth monthly video series featuring engaging Catholic speakers who will challenge you to live your life abundantly. For only $25 a month, you will receive a personal monthly mission, including 3 full-length inspirational talks that build upon a new theme each month. Sign up for the Discover Your Mission tier at patreon.com/patchworkheartministry today.
Welcome to the Sowing Hope podcast. This is a show all about implanting hope in our hearts. I'm Bill Snyder, joined by my friend Ann DeSantis. We're glad you're here for our uplifting conversation about faith and how it sustains our hearts through all the seasons of life. Thanks for walking with us. And good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Sowing Hope podcast. I am Bill Snyder, and it's great to be with you on this morning. And welcome to each and every one of you, no matter how you're listening to us, whether that be on YouTube, TuneIn, Podbean, or some other way you are listening. Thank you so very much for being here and tuning in today to Sowing Hope. It's great to be with you. As always, I'm joined by my co-host and friend, Ann DeSantis. How are you this morning?
Oh, great. It's so good to be here on this morning.
Awesome. Very good. And we have a wonderful guest today, Ann. Why don't you tell us about him?
Yes, his name is Brice Sokolowski, and he is the founder of CatholicFundraiser.net. So very excited to have you with us, Brice.
You got to unmute there, Brice. Unmute. Here we go.
There I am. Now I'm unmuted. Good to be here. Thank you both for having me. A joy to be here. God bless.
Oh, it's a joy to have you. And I love the work that you're doing. And you were in a successful career in technology consulting and lived in places such as Dallas, San Francisco, Paris, Abu Dhabi, and London, all around the world. And at the age of 27, you left what you were doing to do something different. So tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up obviously with my name, Sokolowski, very Polish Catholic. Brice is the French pronunciation of Brice. So I'm French Polish, so very, very Catholic background. Grew up Catholic, raised Catholic all my life. But then, I think like most Catholics or anybody who is looking for the meaning of life, they're trying to figure out, well, what can I do with the talents that I have? And I was blessed to have a successful career at a young age. I got to travel the world, work in very large, 6 big companies to see how, the business side of things work, how people work efficiently. But at the same time, it's, if anybody's who's worked in a professional environment, it can sometimes be a little soul sucking. Not to say that they're all like that, but, it's, you put a lot of hours into a job, and usually, especially, I guess, I've been out of the professional world for a while, but you really never talked about God. You talked about God with a few people, maybe just because, to shoot time, but it was very boring. So I thought, well, I have this professional experience. What can I do with it? And I found fundraising. And so that's how I got to where I am today.
Well, I think it at this time right now, for people like myself who are actually a director for a nonprofit, and for even Bill Snyder as well with Patchwork Heart Ministry, also the founder of a nonprofit, your work is so needed for people like us. And so I'm very grateful, because I'll tell our audience too that I've decided that the foundation that I work for is now working with you and getting your help. So far, so good. And I'm glad that we've signed up for the program.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that so far, so good. It's my objective. I'm blessed to have had the experience that I had in the professional world, but I came into Catholic fundraising knowing that, you can't just apply, business practices, into the Catholic world. I worked 3 years at a diocese. I've worked with many apostolates, many religious orders, and the focus really is the mission, Christ. It's the bottom line is souls. The bottom line is not efficiency, donations, and I understand that. And I went to go get my theology degree, a master's. I wouldn't say I'm a theologian, but I really wanted to make sure that I understood the balance between, doing fundraising correctly, doing fundraising efficiently, so that number one, you're always focused on your mission, but number two is that fundraising assists the mission efficiently. So the mission is the mission, and when God calls you to do more, and you're stretched with your resources, more than likely God might be telling you, hey, you need to get, you need to expand. And so that's where I think is my is where I excel, is understanding that Catholics, first and foremost, it's the mission, it's the saving lives and saving souls, but at the same time, it's trying to find a way of not having a headache and stressing about where the next donation is, and trying to figure out there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a way that I can just do fundraising efficiently while I can actually focus even more on my mission. So I'm really, really passionate about that.
Yeah, and I noticed that about you very quickly, Brice. When we did our other show, Young Catholics Respond, I had you on just a few, I guess, month ago or so on that, and you bring the passion of being authentically and fully Catholic, and mixing it with all this other experience. And as you said, it's not just about bringing or having this worldly mindset. It doesn't always just translate itself directly to the church's operations. And so one of the very neat things, and maybe you can just talk about a few of them, and I love the PDF document that's available free on your website too, is that 10 Commandments of Catholic Fundraising. And I was surprised in reading it how few of them seemingly have to do with actual, like, okay, I'm going to go out and ask for donations now, I mean, yes, there's some in there, but a lot of them are about connecting with human beings and being, a good Catholic first, and the money kind of follows the mission. So maybe just talk a little bit about some of those, and some of those, because I'm sure there's a lot of pastors, a lot of people out there listening to this right now that are going, okay, how do I do this? How do I enhance my my fundraising efforts while still being true to my core mission?
Absolutely. Great question and great topic. Yeah. So my website, as you'd mentioned, CatholicFundraiser.net, my focus is to help everybody. And usually that means a lot of people just want a little bit of direction on what to do. And to be honest, they don't want to hire a fundraiser. They don't want to spend any money. They just want to know what to do. So my website, CatholicFundraiser.net, is pretty much me documenting everything that I've been doing, probably, I think, for the past 7 years. So I provide tons of resources. I always tell people 99% of everything that I do is absolutely for free on my website. The 1% that's not free is, if somebody wants me to work with them directly, and I somehow have to keep the website on from month to month. But I've got the 10 Commandments to Catholic Fundraising. It's a free guide that people can download. And as you mentioned, it's just very practical. Fundraising is actually very practical, and there is a Catholic way of approaching it, which I think makes it more palatable to Catholic directors, leaders of apostolates. Even if you're a religious order, you're an abbot, an abbess, you're gonna see that there's a lot of things that you're probably forgetting to do just as a normal day-to-day, you could say, Catholic. Like, for example, the whole concept of thanking people. When you think of fundraising and thanking, you think, well, I'll just thank them after a donation. I'm like, well, one of the joys in life is to be thankful for God's gifts. I even think I always have a horrible memory, but I believe in section 4 of the Catechism, on prayer says that one of the sections is on is to be thankful and to thank God. And so we have to think of being thankful is an everyday action. And so I tell people, well, don't just wait until somebody donates and send that one card. Thank them, throughout the year. Thank people who even haven't donated. Maybe they volunteered, they commented on something, they gave you a call, they inspired you with, a conversation that you had. So one of the key things is be more thankful and appreciative. Parable of the talents is be thankful for what you have as opposed to, complaining about what you don't have. So it's things like that I try and share with people, and then explain how that directly correlates to being more successful in fundraising, and how to actually ask for that donation.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And everything that you're saying, since I have signed on to the program, I know you said 99% of what you do is there right on the website and it's available for free. But the foundation that I work for has decided to kind of come on board with you. And I'm very excited about that. And you have already taught me so much about the value of that thank you and the value of sending emails. And, I honestly didn't know that there was such a value in sending that email to do different things, such as say thank you, to give them an update and other things, So maybe you could talk more about that, because some people think that only on social media will you be able to attract attention, but I know that's not really true from what I've learned.
Yep, that's correct. And with the program that you've joined, Ann, what I provided is the structure that people, if someone's in a situation where like, well, great, I can go on your website and I can, browse through everything. And, I've had people email me and say they've gone through every single article. They've spent hours on my website trying to piece things together. But if you don't have that time, there is a program, and I, do step by step and work with you. And like you mentioned, communicating, it's funny when we think of the internet, we think of like, there's people on the other side. It's like, I don't know, it's like the road driving to somebody's house. There's a house on the other side of the road. There's somebody who actually lives there. And I think when people talk about emails and email blasts and social media posts, they think it's kind of throwing things out there and hopefully you get a comment, or you get a response. Well, what's really happening is when you get an email response is somebody actually read what you said, thought about it, clicked the reply button, typed something and sent it. I mean, there's a lot of actions there, and one person decided to do that. The same thing with social media. Somebody actually, and this is the crazy thing with Facebook, the majority of what you send is probably not going to be seen by the majority of the people that you want it to see. But when it is, and somebody reads it, likes it, comments, that's another human being. And if you learn how to get really, you learn how to do it well. And it's not to say that you have to spend hours on social media. I mean, that's what we're going to learn together. And is kind of like tricks and trades of, how to automate things, how to be time efficient with your time. There's a lot of things that you can do with the internet to scale that ability of thanking people. And that's one of the key things that I teach, is that instead of going door to door, meeting one person at a time, the internet has the capacity of reaching hundreds of thousands of people, but also allowing you to see, well, I need to be really reaching out to these 10, 20, 50 people right now. It makes a world of a difference in your future fundraising efforts.
Yeah, there's a world of information on your website. And so just to tell people again to go to catholicfundraiser.net. So I would love to hear more about your own personal faith story. You told us a little bit about it at the beginning, but we always talk about that on Sowing Hope. I know you said that you were Catholic, raised Catholic, and it was always a really deep part of who you are. Was there ever a point in your life where you came to a deeper conversion?
Definitely in my 20s. As a still, I consider myself a young Catholic man, but definitely in my 20s, you start thinking about, what it means to be a man. And obviously to be a man is, to protect people, to stand up for truth, and, to to be an example for other people. And, you know, little by little, you start, you know, when you try and kind of like raise the bar, or have people see you as a, you know, as, hey, he's a good guy, he's a good Catholic man, you know, people start asking you questions about what do you think of this and what do you think of that. And then all of a sudden, you know, your whole life is on display. So, you know, everything that you do has to exemplify what you believe in, the truth. And so, you know, I wouldn't say I ever completely left the church, but, you know, I was the classic Sunday goer, and, you know, Monday to Saturday, I was pretty much, you know, going to work. I was working ridiculous hours, but, you know, I felt I was really bored. So it was much more trying to find purpose in life, and then linking it with what my talents were. I mean, I met a lot of Catholics who would love to do more for the faith, but one of the biggest challenges, like, well, I want to have a family, you know, I want to be able to provide. And they're like, well, if I go work for this nonprofit or this apostolate or this diocese, it's like, you know, it's classic in the nonprofit world, you know, you can't really have a salary. And so I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people, they would love to do this type of work, but, you know, there's no salary. And they're like, well, I got kids. And so that means you're really limiting the type of talent that nonprofits can attract. And so one of the things that I got excited about, like, well, if we could get rid of the money issue, we could, you know, it's not to say we could solve all the issues, but that really excited me as well. Because, I mean, it excited me for myself, because I'm like, well, I don't want to do my job, but at the same time, I want to provide for a family. So I had to figure out the solution to that problem, and then I found it, and then now I'm thinking, well, I can help other people.
That's beautiful, really, really beautiful. And it, I think what you're talking about is a really good lesson too for a lot of Catholics out there. Find what you're passionate at. You know, really discern. I mean, you spend a lot of time discerning. It's just very clear. You spend a lot of time discerning what your passion was and what God was calling you to. You know, God does not want to make us fit into a cookie cutter model. That's not who God is. You know, God created each and every one of us to be unique people, right? With unique passions and desires and interests. And he wants you to live that to the fullest. And in your story, Brice, you have such a great way of saying, you know what? I wanted to be able to look inwardly, look at my talents, look at my gifts, look at my strengths, and even some of my weaknesses, I'm sure, and say, okay, how can I employ this for the kingdom of God? And that is such a powerful lesson for each and every one of us listening to you today, because I really believe if we did that more, that, you know, not only nonprofits, but each of us would be living for the kingdom of God. Each of us would be living to help other people. Each of us would be living to help our fellow man and build up the kingdom of God. You know, it's like that mousetrap game, right? Where each and every one of us are maybe a different piece of the puzzle, right? Like, you know, I can't be both the yellow bucket and the green boot. I might only be able to be the yellow bucket. But both have equal importance. And I think if we all try to be the same thing, we never accomplish God's mission in this life. So what a beautiful way for you to really look inwardly and also challenge other people to do the same thing. So thank you for that.
Bill, you said that so well, and Brice, you as well, because as the director of a nonprofit, when we're talking about gifts and talents, I will admit to our listeners here that the whole idea of all the organizational pieces of fundraising, being this director for a nonprofit where we also have ministry work, you know, there's ministry work that we're doing, and also the organizational part of everything to do with money and being able to connect and fulfill a mission. As you said, it's not just about money, but there is a financial piece to being able to stay afloat, right? And so you have helped to, so far in my work with you, just over the last few weeks and getting started, helped me to become more organized in that whole realm, because, it is kind of a full-time job in and of itself, I think. And just to be able to take the guesswork out of it, or to be able to just have more of a handle on all of it and understand what is most effective to reaching those people that we're ministering to, and to keep this nonprofit going, if that makes any sense.
It makes complete sense. I mean, anyone who's getting into the nonprofit world and wanting to help an apostolate, or even the religious life, nobody goes in thinking, well, I realize I'm going to have to fundraise and I'm going to have to make, possibly, support what I'm doing. You don't really think about that. And if you think about that, you kind of put it on the side and you say, I'll deal with that when it comes. But when it comes, you're like, well, how do I do this? Like, where are the answers? Who can help me? And all of a sudden, I see it over and over again. Anyone who's responsible for fundraising is kind of, left to their own, left on their own, and like, well, you'll figure it out. And, everyone that says these encouraging words, hey, don't worry, you'll figure it out. But then, when you have trouble figuring it out, they're like, well, they're kind of like, well, instead of like helping, sometimes they're like, well, maybe we need to change things. And next thing you know, the goals and the objectives start shrinking, and you had these aspirations to do so much, and little by little everything is dwindling, and you're trying to fix the holes in the bucket. Maybe that's a good analogy, but then there are more and more holes, and nobody really knows how to plug them, and it can be really, really depressing. So I consider myself phone a friend, like, what do I do here? And I'm happy to help, because I've recognized that if I can help you plug a few holes, you start recognizing, okay, this is how you do it. And then all of a sudden the answers start coming from within, and you start figuring out the patterns. One of my big things that I try and teach people is understanding the process of fundraising and figuring out how to think about it and how to relook at everything that you were doing. There's a lot of obviously technical things that you have to learn, but if you can understand the real big picture of how to solve these problems and get answers, you breathe much easier, and you sleep better at night. And of course, you raise more funds.
It makes so much sense. It honestly does, because I think one of the things that I see that you're teaching me is the whole idea of really becoming more organized, the way that you do everything, with all the interactions that you make with all the people, keeping track of everything properly, sending out those proper emails to thank, but not just after the donation, as you said. Now, there's another aspect that I was completely unaware of that you have enlightened me, and I know you enlightened Bill too, that the idea of the Google grant. I didn't know if you wanted to get into that a little bit.
Yeah, the Google grant, it's the only grant that I recommend anybody apply for. I'm not a big fan of grants, just because it really is hit and miss, and it's a lot of stress. But the Google grant, of course, if you have, if you don't like Google and you don't want to use Google, then don't use Google. But if you want to leverage what Google has to offer, I think it's worthwhile, because Google, it's a pretty easy, Anne will probably say it's not, it's easy to apply for, but to finish, sometimes there's a few hoops, but it's not intentional. There's technical issues. But anyways, the Google grant, you apply, it's really simple. $120,000 in ad credit a year. So it's not $120,000 in your bank account, but I really think it's the next best thing, because it allows you to advertise what you're doing on the internet. So if you are a Catholic apostolate and somebody writes something, maybe you're an apostolate that wants to spread that, praying the rosary. Well, the key words, Holy Rosary, Rosary of Our Lady, any type of rosary, novenas. I mean, people are searching these on Google hundreds of thousands of times. And just like a business would use Google advertising to get people to know about them, you can do the same thing for your nonprofit. So even though it's not $120,000 a year, it's $10,000 of real money in your bank account. It is the next best thing, because you can use Google's credit card pretty much to do something for you. So Google is like saying it's giving you a lunch money. So you don't have to buy your own lunch. You just use that. And, you have a lunch, you have ad spend. And it equates to about probably between 40 and 60,000 people a year see your website. And so these are 40,000, 50,000, 60,000 people that would never know about you if you hadn't done this. And so it's a great opportunity to get known. And then what I'm doing with Ann is we're figuring out, okay, we're going to get all these people to know about you. Then let's start figuring out, well, what do we do with these people? It's like, what do you do when these people walk into your, walk into your church? You got 40,000 people walking into your church hall. What do you do? How do you explain to them what it is that you do and how you can help them? And so that's the whole process that we're entering in with the Google grant. But very, very powerful. Anyone can Google on the internet, Google grant, and see what it's about.
Yeah, and Google for Nonprofits is such a powerful tool as well. I mean, I know it's not even just the grants, Brice. It's also the fact that, we have our own YouTube channel. We do, Ann does a TV show, Journeys in Faith, on Friday nights on Patchwork Heart and Fiat Ministry Network. And one of the coolest things about it is that you can drop in cards that link to any website on your YouTube videos. So I've put donation links in. I've put my own website, and it pops up as you're saying it. So let's say I'm talking about Catholic fundraising. We're going to post this video up or on YouTube for people to view. I bet you I can put a card right here, right now. If you look at your screen, that's going to say Catholic fundraising or donate to Patchwork Heart Ministry, and you click on that, it's going to take you right to my donation page. And I think that is such a cool feature. I mean, even yes, the Google Ads is wonderful, and I've used them for my ministry, so it's an amazing tip. And you also have a YouTube video out there that explains how to do it in depth. So if you're looking for more, I know we kind of glossed over it here on this podcast, but if you are looking for kind of like detailed instructions, Brice has that up on his YouTube channel. All you have to do is kind of search that, and he'll be able to walk you through it. I think a 6 or 7 minute long video that walks you through how to do it. And it's very easy, but there are so many benefits to it. You even get an additional 30 gigabytes of cloud space in your email through Google's platform. And as you kind of alluded to, Brice, some people might say, well, I don't want to use Google because of what Google stands for with some of their, social policies and things like that as a practicing Catholic. But one of the things that you have to think about is the new evangelization and how do you evangelize out in the world? Well, if we're only evangelizing to the people who are in our pews, then we're not doing much evangelization. Evangelization has to be reaching out to the wider net, reaching out to the wider group of people that are maybe have absolutely no idea that the Catholic Church stands for these things or is about these things. And so in some ways it helps level the playing field between many other organizations that are advertising and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on advertising. And here we are as a small, apostolate able to compete on some level with them.
Yeah, it's, step one is, with Christ, everything is possible. That's number one. And my understanding is you march forward with Christ, and then all of a sudden you get these other things that can help you. And so if you're looking for other tools to help you, there are obviously is Google for Nonprofit. There's tons of free stuff. Like I speak to Catholic apostolates, and they're just starting out and we need to raise money. And well, why? It's like, you live in 2020. It's like YouTube channel, absolutely free. You don't need help. You learn how to use hashtags. Facebook is free. You obviously can get Google G Suite. If you need help designing things, there's software for free. There's tons of companies out there that if you go on their website and you do the search bar, nonprofit access, usually they have some type of discount or it's absolutely for free. So that paired with my website, I always tell people is you absolutely have no excuse not to be able to fundraise or say that I don't know how to do it, or or this whole notion, and maybe we should get into this, is Catholics aren't generous. People don't have money. It's difficult out there. We just got through a pandemic. Look, the Catholic Church thrives under pressure. I mean, that's what we're designed for battle. I mean, we are the church militant. If you look at, I think statistically, the first 30 popes were killed? Is that correct? It's something like that, right?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure on that number, but I would go with it. I'm sure that many.
Yeah,
that's the case.
I mean, it's and they obviously, the blood of the martyrs. So, from my personal experience, the apostolates that I'm helping this year, they have raised. This is not to tout, but some people think that there's just no money out there and nobody's generous. I'll tell you what, Catholics, when they see a good apostolate and they're like, that's exactly what I was looking for, they'll donate. The reason that people think, oh, Catholics aren't generous is because they don't see anything that really inspires them. They'll see a Sunday collection instead of having a homily. They'll get some, hey, this is our collection for this. Every year they ask for money, but then you never really get an update on what's going on, what they're doing, or you might hear something about, maybe there's a scandal again. All my life, not to go down the path of criticism, but I'm a little appalled how it's just, and this has been going on for 2,000 years since Judas, and I understand that. But at the same time, there's got to be the good news stories, and that's what I'm trying to tell Catholics. If you are a good news story and you have an apostolate that is ready and roaring to go, get out there. There's tons of free tools, and when Catholics see you, they're going to be extremely generous because I see it every day. That's one of the benefits of my job, is I get to see the positive side, I guess, as a fundraiser. And I'm not working with large organizations. I'm usually working with organizations that have been bootstrapped for the past 10 years. And they're like, we need to rise up to the occasion. And it's very exciting. I could talk forever, but I'm going to pause.
Oh, that sounds good. And it excites me because I'm in that position, right? I mean, with the foundation that I represent, would you have any advice then for nonprofits who have been around for more than a few years and they don't feel as organized as you're describing? Does it take a while for them to catch up, would you say? I mean, that's a big question for me, is about how long do you think, and I guess it all depends, right? How long it takes for them to kind of catch up to where they should be as far as the organizational level and making that better outreach to those they are serving.
Good question. I always tell people, the Catholic Church, nonprofits in general are probably 20 years behind, the professional world in the ability to use technology, use best practices and stuff like that. So we're already behind the curve. So that means, the competition is, there's always room. So if you're behind, but that's the great part of at least being in the United States. Even if you are, a small fish in a big in the sea, you can learn how to do things very, very quickly if you're committed. And so that's why I tell people, just go to my website. And if you want to learn, new tools and strategies for the new evangelization when it comes to fundraising, it doesn't matter if you've been around. I'm working, for example, with one organization. They've been around for 20 years. They've kind of been slow and steady growing bit by bit and had some difficult times. But they finally said, you know what, we need to get our act together. And I shared them, what I do and how I do it. And we started implementing it. And they're reinventing themselves. It's unbelievable. So if you're just starting out with getting organized, I would say step one, go to my website and say, look, I can't do what the nonprofit or the apostolate to my left and right is doing. I've got to do something different. And we mentioned earlier about the new evangelization. I think the apostolic exhortation by Pope Paul VI, I believe it was in 72 or 73. One of the big things of the new evangelization is social communications. That's how they described it in the document. And Pope Paul VI was really passionate, and he was only talking about radio and TV, but he did mention like this stuff is changing on a regular basis, and the church needs to keep up with it, because this is really important to be able to evangelize and spread the gospel. So he was very adamant. This is almost 45, 50 years ago. So the time is now. Just say, hey, I'm committed, but I need help, and there's somebody there to help you.
Yeah, that's very good advice. Are there many nonprofits where there is, say, a director or an executive director? Is it normally that there's like the whole idea of the apostolate itself and the ministry is most times that director or the person who's kind of running the nonprofit itself? Are there other people that are usually assigned to the ministry part of it, or have you seen both? I just wondered. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Did you rephrase the question?
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, there's all different kinds of nonprofits, and sometimes there's one person doing everything, including the ministry and the actual, logistical fundraising and all of that. Do you see mostly that there are separate people assigned to those different areas, or I guess is it varied?
Well, usually what I find is the director or the leader is passionate about the mission. And so they really want to focus on the mission, and then anything with fundraising, logistics, operations, administrative, they try and outsource those to somebody else. And that it's not a recipe for success, because maybe this is not the best analogy, but I mean, take an abbot of a Benedictine monastery. I mean, look at the Benedictines. I mean, the abbot is, a lot of best business practices actually have been referenced back to how the Benedictines operated their monasteries. And the abbot, he knew everything about his monks and the efficiency. Same thing with, I believe it was, I forget the name. Well, definitely Saint Ignatius of Loyola was the same. There was also a saint. If you go to my website, there's actually a section on saints and fundraising. These saints, they didn't outsource. Well, I don't want to know about the fundraising. I don't want to know about the operation. They had their hands in it. And so what I usually see is the director comes in and says, I want to be focused on the mission. You get somebody else to do the operations. And it just doesn't work that way. You have to, if anything, understand everything about your apostolate. It's not to say you don't outsource certain things, but at the end of the day, you have to be accountable for absolutely everything. And if fundraising succeeds, you applaud everyone for the hard work. But if fundraising is failing, you have to raise your hand and say, this is my fault and I'm going to fix it. So not a lot of apostolates think like that, but the ones that are successful, they have directors that understand that the buck stops with me, and I'm going to learn how to do this stuff. I'm going to take the leadership role, and I'm not going to look to anyone else to resolve these issues.
Yeah, because from what you're describing too, the whole relationship with the people that you're ministering to, those you're serving, those you're making outreach to, you want to know them, and you can't do that. You can't really do that unless your hands are in it. From what I'm hearing from you,
your hands have to be in everything, and that's the thing. And then that's where the world of efficiency comes in. Usually, when I start working with somebody, your week is full with mission stuff, and like, well, how am I going to get the fundraising? And that's where we have to figure out. Well, we have to be more efficient with time, and then we have to figure out, what can we hand off to other people, because I teach people how to fundraise. The best fundraising is always going to happen from within. Donors want to speak to the director. Donors want to have that conversation about what's really going on the inside. So, for anyone who's saying, well, we'll just hire somebody, that's also pretty much a recipe for failure and a loss of money, because on average, a fundraiser, if you hire just, someone in their 20s for $28,000, $35,000, on average, they're only going to stay 18 months. And they're only staying 18 months because either one, they realize they really don't like the job, so they're going to leave, and they weren't very good at it. So you lost money, and you probably didn't raise any money. Or the second, they do raise their money. They do raise money. They probably raise their salary and a little bit more, but then they recognize that they're really good at this and they can probably do it for someone else for a whole lot more money. So you're in between a rock and a hard place, whether your fundraiser that you hired was good or bad. And so I teach people, you really have to learn this stuff. That's why, I'm the phone a friend, because I've been there. I've been through the trenches, and then hopefully, week by week, you start seeing the light and things get a little bit easier.
Yeah. I mean, I'm experiencing that already with you, with having signed up with CatholicFundraiser.net and invite people who are listening. We do get a lot of religious and pastors and people who work in churches that if you are a nonprofit, I mean, this is what you want to do. You want to learn from Brice, whether or not you sign up for his program or not. There's a lot of free resources there. And kind of getting back to what I was just saying before, there are nonprofits that are being run by people where they are doing the actual ministry and also all the organizational. So in other words, it's a lot. It's a lot for somebody like that. Would there be any advice on balancing the fact that maybe they are offering some kind of a service where half their time is devoted to actually doing the actual ministry work? And then there's also all this administrative and the, as you said, balancing of the financial administrative part of that job. How do they do that? I mean, is there a way to do that where they're not only are they a minister in some sorts because they're a nonprofit, they themselves, but they're also doing all this other management?
Well, I tell people that if you do want to fundraise, I mean, the assumption is that God wants you to do more with what you have. He wants you to expand. He wants you to change. He wants the apostolate to grow. And if that's the case, that your ministry today without, fundraising or getting better at fundraising is going to have to change. And so with that, what you did yesterday cannot be what you do tomorrow. And if you really are looking to fundraise, fundraising is, this is serious business because you're taking people's hard-earned money that could go anywhere else. Whether they're giving it to their kids, they're buying, their spouse a gift, or whatever they want, they're giving it to you. So there's a serious commitment there. And so if you make that realization that, hey, I've got to fundraise because God is calling me to grow, it simply means that we have to change. God is asking us to do what we're doing differently. And if that's the case, and fundraising is part of it, we have to start looking at, well, what are you doing on a day-to-day basis? And how is it going to change? I mean, there's the great thing with the Catholic faith is, we use logic, we use reason, we use our intellect, we use prudence, we use judgment, we use our knowledge. We use all of these things to figure out, okay, if God is calling me to fundraise, that means I've got to find a way to do it in a Catholic way. But at the same time, everything that I'm doing might have to change, and you have to, and that's one of the big issues that I see with Catholic organizations is, but this is like anyone, nobody really wants to change. You speak about the saints, this whole concept of building habits, shedding the old, becoming new, being more like Christ. I mean, it's a day-to-day base effort in the spiritual world and the personal life. It's the same thing with an apostolate. If you have to change. And sometimes, the older we get, the harder it is to change. But even when you're young, you don't even notice your bad habits. And so you just have to kind of let go and say, look, I got to change. And, that's what we're going to be working on with you, Anne, is figuring out, well, what's got to change. And, hopefully it's a smooth road, but sometimes it's a bit bumpy. But at the same time is when you look back, you're like, wow, we've changed a lot. We've grown a lot and we've learned a lot.
Yeah, it's a really fantastic process because it's all good. I mean, everything that you're doing to help nonprofits like myself and others, it's all good. And I remember I asked you, I guess it was a week or so ago, how can I make this work? And you said something like, are you good at following instructions? And I said, well, I'll try my best. So if you can follow instructions, then I guess you can do this, right? Is it that simple?
I mean, more or less. I mean, it's like the Catholic Church. It's our faith. We don't have to reinvent anything. We have the deposit of faith, and to be a really good Catholic is to accept church teaching, accept church doctrine, and follow the recommendations of the what we've received as Catholics. And I think that's a difficulty for a lot of people, is they want to kind of change things, and that's where you get into murky water. And that's where when somebody says, like, I'm having difficulty in life, or obviously ailments and stuff like that bring a challenge, but when your faith is tested, hopefully you've prepared yourself by saying, I'm going to follow what the Catholic Church teaches, because it's as simple as that. But most people, I'll raise my hand, every now and again, we want, like, well, I'm going to try this. And I've learned throughout my 20s and now in my 30s, I'm like, well, now that little light goes on, I'm like, well, I better watch out, because maybe I need to rethink this. And it's the same thing with fundraising, is that now I've learned it, that if I try and do something different than what I've structured, I'm like, I'm more than likely gonna get into some murky water. So yeah, just like good Catholics, you just got to follow the rules. You got to follow the commandments. And if you do that, God is going to see that. He's going to provide more of his graces. Our Lady's going to see that. The saints are going to see that. And we got to stick with the playbook.
That's right. Yeah. And, you're also teaching people who are, those that are over a certain age, we'll say. And when you say 20s and 30s, how about working with those people who maybe are stuck in habits? They're in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, like myself, mid 50s here, and having to, get myself in line with what's going on right now, and making sure that I stay on top of that, because it is a little more of a struggle for those, I think, sometimes, that are over a certain age and remember how things were done 10, 15 years ago, and they're different now.
Well, I always tell people that for every challenge that you overcome, there was probably 100 people that gave up right there. So Amen. Even if you're just struggling to get the Google grant approved, you're like, my gosh, this is a mess. Just imagine there are thousands of people in that situation, and the majority of them just give up. So the second that you have it, open up that bottle of champagne, because you're like, wow, I've come a long way, and a lot of people are behind me.
That.
I mean, that's how I kind of see it, is like, for every struggle, and it's sometimes it's the little things, for like, oh, I got to make phone calls. I got to speak to this person. Like, well, there are tons of Catholic apostolates or just nonprofits that don't want to make the phone calls, don't want to reach out, don't want to, rethink the way they fundraise, don't want to change. But when you make that decision every day, and it's the little by little, I always say incremental. I'm not a guy we're going to have a massive campaign, going to raise millions. It rarely works like that. I always tell people it's one day at a time. I think what Jesus, I'm horrible with remembering exactly what's in the Bible, but I think, Jesus says, don't worry about tomorrow. Just worry about today. You see the birds, they're taken care of, and every hair on your head is counted. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to worry about this silly little task that I can't seem to figure out, and I'm going to do my best. I'm not going to worry about anything else. And then when you do have it done, you look up, and then you're like, yes.
Yeah. And what a beautiful mentality. And again, this stuff is applicable. If you're listening to this and you're one of our regular listeners, this stuff is applicable to your life. I mean, Brice, you've made it so, palatable. You've made fundraising like living your faith. You've made fundraising like living your faith, and living your faith like fundraising in some ways. And I think that is so palatable for just the average person that's out there listening to this. I want to talk to maybe the faithful in the last few minutes of this, and talk to them about what the importance of being a donor, right? Like the average person listening to our program probably is a Catholic who doesn't necessarily have a big apostolate. Yes, we got some pastors and some great people who are leading the way in the church listening. to our program, and we thank them. But there's the majority of those people are probably just your average Catholic that are spending, those mom and dads that could be spending their money on their children, as you said earlier. What would you say to them about the apostolates that they're passionate about? It doesn't necessarily have to be ours. I mean, it'd be great. It's lovely if it's ours, but what would you say to them about those people or their hard-earned dollars going to their missions, other than thank you? Yes, of course, thank you for donating to the Catholic Church and helping build it up. But what else would you say to them?
Well, I mean, I myself as a donor, I really like seeing the inside story. And so more than likely, if somebody's donating to an apostolate, or, I mean, I really like religious orders. I really like ones who kind of go the extra mile, while actually just do what I think everyone should be doing, is just communicating, what's going on inside, and, helping me become a better Catholic. So like I mentioned before, Catholics are generous. I think it's just the apostolates who've been, have missed, have missed the target, dioceses and parishes. So when Catholics like me see a great apostolate that link with what I'm passionate about, and that's the great thing about the Catholic Church, is there's so many different things to donate to. Certain Catholics love the pro-life movement so much that they'll donate. Others like religious orders so much that they'll donate to that. Other ones are inspired by young adult organizations. So the great thing with the Catholic Church is there's something for everybody. And I think donors are just looking for something that they really like. And oftentimes maybe they don't know what they really like, because it's hard to get out there and get known. And so that's why, to go back to the Google grant, it's so helpful, because one of your biggest struggles as an apostolate is getting known. But if people know you, they're like, wow, I really like what you do. They follow you, they tell about you to their friends. And the next thing you know, you're off to the races. So to those donors, one of the things that I'm trying to do is help Catholic apostolates serve Catholics better. So that way Catholics see them and say, you know what, I really like what you do, and I really want to donate to you. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there. So I definitely would like to encourage people to learn more about what you're doing. Again, his name is Brice Sokolowski, and it's catholicfundraiser.net. Is there any other links or anything else that you want to mention to people that they can either like or follow any of your pages?
Well, on my website, you'll see links. I have a YouTube channel where I do a weekly vlog, and I just explain, this is what I'm doing. Maybe it'll interest you. The viewer, like this week was, if you're new to fundraising and you wanted to kind of like get into the, Advent is coming up, the end of the year, obviously big time for fundraising. If you're just rolling up your sleeves and you're trying to figure out, well, really didn't do much during coronavirus. What do I do? I shot a video of 3 things that I think someone should do. If you're worried about, well, how do I make up for lost time? Written videos about that. How did the saints fundraise? I've done about that. So YouTube, definitely. I have a podcast as well that's on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Google, most everything. But definitely the website is the place to go. And obviously I'm on Facebook, but I always tell people, if you want help, just go to the website, catholicfundraiser.net. It's got tons of resources. If you like videos, there's videos. If you want audio, there's audios. If you want to read things, all my videos are now transcribed, so you can just print them out and read them. I've even met a few people that just say, we print out your transcripts, Brice, and we highlight the key points. So I'm glad people, I try and accommodate everybody, because I know everybody's a bit different. But there's an answer, and there's somebody that can help them. And that's what I try and be with catholicfundraiser.net.
Yeah, you're really doing amazing work.
Yes.
Otherwise, I don't think I would have signed up. The foundation would have signed up with you for your program to get more help. So really looking forward to that. And I invite people who are listening, hey, check in with me and find out more about how it's going with our foundation. It's nonatus.org, the St. Raymond Nonatus Foundation for freedom, family, and faith.
Yes. Well, this has been so much fun today, and I think very informational and very uplifting for a lot of Catholic organizations that are out there. This is possible to be able to do, and so thank you to both of you for all of your time today discussing this and being who you are being and helping the church, Brice. You're just a great soul. So thank you so much.
Amen. Thank you, Brice, and thank you, Bill.
Thank you both. Thank you so much.
Well, folks, this has been an episode of Sowing Hope. Until next time, from all of us at Patchwork Heart Ministry, the St. Raymond Nonatus Foundation, and Fiat Ministry Network, thank you so much for tuning in. We look forward to you reaching out to be with us on our websites. And until next time, keep beating to your Catholic heart and sowing hope into broken hearts.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Sowing Hope on Patchwork Heart Radio. For more information about this podcast and our ministries, visit our websites, patchworkheart.org and andesantis.com. You can also follow and interact with us on Twitter at PWH Ministry or Andy Santis 2.